I used to think I knew a whole lot about how theme parks and rides operated. Then I got a job at one and learned how much I didn't know. And it changed so much of what I see, think, and do at theme parks now. I have absolutely loved theme parks and amusement parks ever since I was a kid. I can remember when they opened up Marriott's Great America in Santa Clara, California when I was about 6 years old. We started visiting it from the time it opened, and we were there every year. I loved that, and Disneyland and Knott's Berry Farm, and just absolutely loved parks. As the years went by, my interest kept up and enjoyed riding everything I could. Come around the 90s or so, this little thing started cropping up called the internet. In the days of 2400 baud modems, dial-up connections and handshakes, and America Online software that you had to use to connect, there was this other thing called the Usenet and BBSs. Through those, I actually began to discover this whole community of people who loved theme parks and roller coasters as much as, and in some cases, much more than me. And I began to learn all of this information and overload myself and really become a major nerd. Yeah. I got to the point where I really thought I knew a whole lot about parks, and I would go to a park and I'd love to tell everybody how much I knew and how they did this and how they did that. What I didn't realize was I was really being an obnoxious jerk, but I learned that later. But with all this knowledge, I thought it made me somebody special, somebody superior to the normal guests. Even to the point where I would start talking down about the regular guests at theme parks, calling them GP, short for general public, and oh, they're just so far beneath me, and the parks should cater to people like me, and I'm so wonderful. Then I finally got a job at a theme park and realized that I was nowhere near as special and wonderful and great as I thought I was. And in fact, there was a whole lot I didn't know and didn't understand, and really people like me were kind of a putz and pain in the neck while I worked. After dealing with people like me some and learning how parks actually operated and rides actually operated, it changed my whole perspective when I visit parks. Everything that I do, everything I see, the things I look for are all radically different now compared to what I used to look for. Now, I was definitely a theme park and roller coaster nerd, which meant I watched for things that most people didn't anyways. But even more so now, I'm much more aware and observant of even what's happening around than the regular guests may be. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Although there are times now where, because I've got theme park experience, I almost want to step over the bounds of being a guest and into helping in places I shouldn't help. So yeah, I do still have that kind of problem a little bit. But let me tell you some of the different ways that my perspective on visiting a park has changed. One of the big areas that I notice is the working conditions for the employees. Whether they're called cast members or citizens or just regular employees or whatever it may be, the working conditions that the people working at the park have to deal with became something that I paid a lot more attention to. Something that a lot of guests may not even be aware of. A good example is a story that I tell in my video about my visit to Astroworld shortly before it closed. We were getting on the Texas Cyclone, their wood roller coaster. It was early in the day, the rides had just opened up. We were a couple of the very first guests on, and the poor ride operator at the control console that dispatches the coaster actually has a swarm of bees right over her head. Now, most of the guests, they're worried about getting on and off the coaster and getting it out and getting buckled in and ready to go. I'm watching everything around, and I see this poor employee having to duck and dodge, and she's literally diving under the bees, hitting the button to dispatch, and then trying to get out of the way of the bees again. Most guests are just oblivious. Yay, how fun! And here I am, my heart's breaking for this poor employee because I can kind of understand what it means to try to have to reach around bugs and critters and things that can sting you to be able to hit a dispatch button and to let vehicles go because I had done something similar. Another example is when I visited Worlds of Fun in the summer of 2017. And if you go back and you watch my videos from that and kind of my review of the park, you'll notice I comment about the stations. It's in the middle of the summer, it's a hot day, everybody's hot, and then of course as you get up into the stations, you notice even more how much hotter it is in there because the air's not moving. Okay, let's get on the ride. have fun, get some cool air on it, and then get out. Except I'm looking around and I'm noticing what the employees are dealing with. The stations have no fans, and I'm trying to figure out why there's no air circulation, how hot they've got to be, and where's the water jug? Why can't I see the water jug? Are they even giving them drinks? Oh, wait, it's kind of hiding in the corner, but they don't exactly have a lot of opportunities to get water. Then my mind starts running. How many employees have had heat stroke or heat exhaustion or collapsed on the dock because they can't cool off? And so I start noticing the way that the parks take care of their employees, or in some cases, don't take care of their employees. And that's usually when I see something like that and I'm going to the park management or the guest relations saying, hey, look, these people are sweating their tushes off for minimum wage. Take care of them. In the same way, I'm also much more aware of staffing levels. Because I worked at parks when we were low staffed or overstaffed, I can oftentimes take a look at a ride and see how many people are working and have a good idea on if they're in good shape or if they're stressed out or if they're not able to do what they need to do. I can look at a roller coaster and see that they've got 2 operators and go, wow, they really should have another 1 or 2 because these 2 people are going to be working their butts off and feeling like they're going to be dead by the end of the day unless they get somebody else in there. Plus, then there's the breaks that they need. It's something that the regular guests may not notice, except guests may be thinking, wow, it's sure taking them a long time to move this line. It's moving very slow. Meanwhile, I'm in line going, okay, I know why it's slow, because they should have another person checking restraints there. They should have another person over at the console there. And I can see what's going on and what is causing the slowdowns. And then when I actually do ride a ride I've worked on, yeah, I'm really overanalyzing it. As an example, I have a hard time riding a theme park train normal anymore. After spending 3 years working on Silver Dollar City's train as a conductor, well, I mean, I wasn't exactly normal to begin with, but now my whole perspective on the train is different. If I'm getting onto a train, I'm watching the conductors and the people letting the people on the train. I'm kind of looking at the engineers. How many engineers do they have? What kind of engine is it? Is it a steam engine? Is it a diesel engine? Is it a coal-fired engine? How many people do they have up in the engine compartment to help run the train? Where are the conductors? How many people are on the platform? How quickly are they loading and unloading the guests? How long do the guests have to sit there on the train before they actually finally get it underway? I nitpick and critique the operations of it a lot. I look for things like, where do they put wheelchairs on and how do they do it? Okay, I'm obviously not in a wheelchair, but I'm still noting things like that because of my experience working with them. It's hard sometimes because you don't just get to ride a ride like I should. I'm too busy noticing other stuff. And my family, they get so used to me doing this that they just kind of tune me out a lot of times so they don't have to hear all of my minutiae about how they're doing things. Because it does drive them a little bit nuts sometimes. Another good example of things that I notice and analyze that most guests don't is how a theme park will do its pictures and its photographers. For most guests, they walk into a park and you've got the wall of photographers and it's just like, no thanks, goodbye, get away from them and move on. Or maybe buying a picture at a ride. For me, as I walk in, I will look at where the photographer's taking pictures. What kind of backgrounds are they using? Are they forcing themselves on the guests? Does it look like they're using quotas? Does it look like they've got decent camera gear? Yeah, I actually look at the kinds of cameras they're using, so I have an idea to know how good a picture it's going to be. Are the systems that they're doing designed to help them get sales or just force themselves on people? And then here's where it gets really bad. Because of my time at PhotoPass, I will often look at the way a park is running the photographers and then start thinking in my mind, if I was in charge of this, I would do that different, and I would change this, and I would put that person over there, and totally change, I wouldn't do that thing. I mean, almost to the point where I kind of annoy myself because I'm being so silly and nitpicky about it. That's one of the harder things, even. When you visit a park because you see all of these other details, it's easy to get really nitpicky, but at the same time also very understanding. When I see the employees who are working hard and they're sweating and doing everything they can to make the guest experience possible, I have a lot more patience and understanding with them. If they've been out there a long day, they're tired, they're trying hard not to be cranky, they've been dealing with dumb guest questions and silliness all day long, and guests trying to do stuff they shouldn't do, and yes, it happens much more frequently than you'd like to admit. And so I have a lot of patience and understanding for the employees that way. But at the same time, I also tend to be nitpicky when they're doing things they shouldn't. If I see an employee at a theme park who's supposed to be operating a ride, watching a ride, doing guest service, working someplace where there's guests, and I see them pull out their phone, it drives me nuts. Because where I worked at Disney World and Busch and Silver Dollar City, if you pulled your cell phone out in front of guests, it was instant termination. They were going to fire you because you're not paying attention to your job. You're paying attention to your phone. And so when I see that, oh, it annoys me. If I see an employee who isn't doing what they're supposed to pay attention, especially on a safety thing, it annoys me to no end. But at the same time, I'm also much more patient and understanding when they're doing everything they can, and find myself at times wanting to help them, maybe at times in ways it shouldn't. So if I see a guest that starts to play with a restraint or stand up on a ride or something, I'm much more liable to yell at them to stop it, to sit down, because I know what it's like to be that person working the ride and have somebody stand up in the middle of your ride. I had that a couple times working Rhino Rally, and it scared me to death, because you think they're going to fall off and get killed or injured or something. And you don't want to see that, and you especially don't want to be the person working on the ride when it happens. So I do put myself in their shoes that way. And it has made me even a different kind of guest because of that. Because I look at all of these things, and I think back to when I worked at parks, and the guests that I really liked and the guests I didn't. And in my mind, I'm saying, I want to be a good guest. I want to be the kind of guest that these employees working will remember for being friendly, helpful, talking, smiling, telling them good job, thanking them, maybe even sharing some war stories from when we worked at the parks together. I want to be the one that when they interact with, they remember in a good way. As an example, when we were at Worlds of Fun, they had a new trainee on one of the roller coasters, and the trainer was standing right next to him at the dispatch board. And as I'm waiting to get on the roller coaster, I'm watching what they're doing with the training and listening to it and kind of laughing at how many of even the safety phrases they're using are the exact same ones we used at places I worked. And as I'm listening to it, and the trainer is starting to quiz the trainee and asking them things, and the trainee's going, I don't know how to remember this. I'm having a hard time. Well, because it was the same kinds of things I had trained with, I then began kind of shouting out encouragement and quotes and other things and interacting with them. So it was almost like a whole conversation for the trainee to be able to remember. Hey, here's what I did. I remember this. You remember that? Yeah, it was probably goofy. The trainer was kind of laughing like, where do you know all this from? Sorry. But at the same time, by the time it was ready for me to leave, the trainee was saying, that's much more memorable now just because of the interaction. So that's the kind of guest I want to be, is a helpful one, a good one, as opposed to an annoying one who gets in the way and thinks they're special or privileged. As a former employee, I am not privileged or special in a park. I know what it's like when you get those people that think they are. They're pains. They're not fun. Let me be the guest that can help in a good way and get out of the way the rest of the time, but let them be able to do their jobs and do it well and with a smile. And hey, if I can help put that smile on their face, all the better. So that's how working at theme parks has kind of changed what I see and my perspective on things and how I approach them. If you worked at a park, how has it changed the way you view visiting a park? If you haven't worked at a park, how do you think it might change the way you feel? I'd love to hear your views and your stories. Please share them in the comments below. Don't forget to like and share the video too. I would so appreciate it if you do. Thank you as well to all of my supporters and my patrons and everybody who gives. I am so grateful and so appreciative for every single one of you. If you want to know more about me, about my Facebook page, about my Reddit, about merchandise or things like that, please check out the full description below too. Everything you need to know is right there. Thank you so much for watching, and God bless. I used to think I knew a whole lot about... I used to think I knew how to talk. Yeah. I'm waiting for my son grabbing snacks off the side of the screen. That's a cough drop. So there. Okay. We were getting on the Coney Island cyclone? Wrong cyclone. How quickly are they loading and disloading? Disloading? I don't know if I'd want to disload a person. That could be uncomfortable. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button right there. If you'd like to see another great video of mine, there's a good one right there for you. And if you'd like to be like these wonderful people and support me on Patreon, hit that link right there. Thanks so much.